That escape made Rovers try again. Dougan got goal number 2.
He looked like a movie star. He spoke like a rebel, and he played like he didn't care what it cost him. Derek Dougan wasn't built for silence. He wasn't made for obedience. He was made to challenge the rules, the system, the men who thought they were untouchable. They said he was too political, too wild, too honest. But the real problem was this: he saw the game for what it was, and he said it out loud. This wasn't just a footballer. It was a voice they tried to mute, a man they tried to exile, and a name they tried to forget, even as he carried Wolves, stood tall for Northern Ireland, and fought battles that no one else dared touch. But Dougan didn't fade quietly. He left scars. He made enemies. And today we remember them all. These weren't just rivals, they were reminders. This is Derek Dougan, told through the players he clashed with, the managers he defied, and the truths they never wanted spoken. Subscribe now, because real football history doesn't whisper. It howls. Some men clash because of football. Others clash because of who they are. Derek Dougan and Tommy Smith were never going to shake hands and move on. One was flamboyant, outspoken, impossible to contain. The other, a brick wall with boots. Liverpool's enforcer bred in Bootle, raised to destroy. Wolves versus Liverpool was already fire. But when these two collided, it was something deeper. It was tribal. Smith didn't hide his disdain for players like Dougan. Players who talked, dressed sharp, challenged the unspoken rules. And Dougan never backed down from anyone, especially men who tried to break him with silence and tackles. In those fierce 1970s clashes, the midfield turned battlefield. Dougan took hits, Smith delivered them, and neither ever truly let go of it. There were no apologies, no after-match interviews full of pleasantries, just a mutual hatred wrapped in the language of the old game. Studs, stares, and silence. Some rivalries heal, this one never did, and neither of them would have wanted it any other way. If there was one player who played like a prison guard with a grudge, it was Peter Storey, and if there was one player who walked in like he owned the yard, it was Derek Dougan. Their battles weren't just football, they were a collision of codes. Dougan danced with danger. Storey dragged it into the mud. Wolves versus Arsenal became something darker when those two locked eyes. The tackles came fast, no warnings, no hesitations. In one game, Storey hacked Dougan down 3 times in 8 minutes, and every time the Doog got up, angrier, louder, refusing to show pain, Storey didn't flinch. He stared through him like a man sharpening a knife. He didn't care about flair, he wanted obedience. And Dougan was everything he hated. Unpredictable, mouthy, defiant. No handshake, no nod, just war. Boot to shin, elbow to rib. A rivalry born from instinct, not words. They never made peace, because they weren't built for peace. This wasn't football, it was survival in studs. And every scar was earned. If there was one club that mirrored Derek Dougan's own chaos, it was Chelsea. And 2 of their biggest names couldn't stand him. Peter Osgood, the king of Stamford Bridge. Elegant, sharp, adored by London. Ron Harris. Nicknamed Chopper for a reason. He didn't tackle, he carved. Against Chelsea, Dougan walked in like a storm. Swaggering, loud, magnetic. He'd score, smirk and clap back at the shed end like it was his stage. And Chelsea hated him for it. Harris wasn't just a defender. He was a message. Don't come here playing hero. And Dougan, he never ducked. He drove straight into the fire. The battles were brutal. Blood, boots and broken shins. No handshakes, no respect. Only grudges that aged like old bruises. Peter Osgood called Dougan a showman. But it wasn't a compliment. Ossie played with style. Dougan played with fury. 2 strikers, 2 egos. Same pitch. No peace. Chelsea's stars saw Dougan as reckless, theatrical, even disrespectful. Dougan saw them as polished peacocks with thin skin. The tension boiled over in cup clashes. Harris went in high, Dougan went in harder. No punches thrown, but the tackles were insults in motion. In the dressing rooms after, the air was thick with what wasn't said. And when the press asked, Dougan just grinned. Nothing personal, he'd say. But he remembered, and so did they. Some clashed with Dougan on the pitch. Others tried to erase him from the system. Bill McGarry was first. Once a teammate, then his Wolves manager. He became the most personal enemy Dougan ever had. Their relationship wasn't just tense, it was war by silence. McGarry stripped him of the armband, blocked media interviews, fined him for speaking too loud, benched him in 1974, and never explained why. In his autobiography, Dougan attacks McGarry's management style and says their relationship was bitter and irreconcilable. They never spoke again. Two men in the same clubs with different codes. One followed rules, the other rewrote them. Then came Ian Greaves years later. In 1982, Dougan returned, not as player but chairman. He fired Greaves almost immediately. No warning, no explanation. Greaves later admitted, "I was bitter, I felt ambushed." It wasn't football anymore, it was blood in a boardroom. But even above the clubs, there was a bigger enemy, the Football Association. Dougan didn't just dislike them, he wrote an entire book to take them down. In How Not to Run Football, he called them Victorian Edwardian, stuck in a time that punished the players and protected the powerful. He embarrassed officials on live TV, mocked their closed-door policies. He didn't whisper. He roared. No wonder the tributes never came. Dougan's real battles weren't just on grass. They were in boardrooms, press rooms, and institutions. He didn't want fame. He wanted change. And that's why they tried to erase him. He didn't come back to reminisce, he came back to rescue. In 1982, Derek Dougan took the chairman's seat at Wolves. The icon was now in charge, but the game off the pitch had darker rules. He promised revival, big transfers, ambitious rebuilds. Instead, chaos, wages unpaid, managers sacked, trust shattered. He clashed with coaches, alienated the dressing room. Decisions came fast, but respect disappeared even faster. The fans turned, the directors distanced, and soon the press circled like vultures. He walked out, not cheered, but chased. Not remembered, but redacted. For years the club spoke his name like a problem, a mistake, a storm they wished had never returned. He tried to lead them from the fire, but when the flames spread, they blamed the man holding the torch. He came to fix Wolves, but they never forgave him for the smoke. He had survived tackles, sackings, and exile. But the final blows didn't come from a pitch. They came from rooms with no fans, just lawyers, cameras, and long silences. In the 1990s, Derek Dougan was charged with burglary and assault. The headlines didn't wait for proof. He was acquitted. But the damage was done. Sponsors pulled away. Pundit shows stopped calling. Even old allies went quiet. He wasn't just controversial now. He was radioactive. He gave one last televised interview in 2002. His voice didn't tremble, but his words admitted what few ever do. In later interviews, Dougan admitted his public battles had left him isolated. And then, nothing. No articles, no comebacks. Just silence so deep even his critics forgot he was still around. He didn't fade with grace. He faded like a man who had no stage left to burn. June 2007. Derek Dougan dies of a sudden heart attack. No headlines screamed it. No clubs made statements. No minutes silence. He had played over 500 games, scored goals that shook Molineux, spoken words that rattled managers and boardrooms. But when he left like a man erased. No flags at half-mast. No official presence at the burial. Only a quiet chapel, a few former teammates, and some fans in gold and black, still whispering his name. They didn't come for his honours. They came for his defiance. He wasn't easy to like. He wasn't built for obedience, but he stood when others ducked and spoke when others hid. Derek Dougan didn't get applause at the end, but some men aren't meant to be clapped out. Some are meant to leave a silence louder than cheers. He lived divided. He died ignored. But for those who remember, he never once pretended to be anything he wasn't. A fighter, a voice, a man the game couldn't control. He played with fire. He spoke with sharpness. He lived with noise. And when he died, the silence around his name said it all. Derek Dougan should have been remembered with gold-framed photos and front-row honours. But football doesn't always reward the ones who fight the system. He fought for player rights. He backed Irish unity. He clashed with clubs, questioned managers, exposed boardroom hypocrisies. And that made him dangerous. To fans, he was a cult icon. To suits in ties, he was a problem too hard to control. There were no documentaries, No campaigns to rename a stand. No polished interviews from those who once shook his hand. Just a few broken clips. A few scattered fans who still tell stories. A few quiet tributes from those who knew the cost of defiance. The Doog didn't get erased. He got buried beneath discomfort. Because some men say too much. They shine a light where the game prefers shadows. And when they do, football looks away. But you're here and now you know. So say his name. Because they never wanted to. Derek Dougan. Subscribe for the names they tried to forget. The rebels. The misfits. The ones who never played safe.